I don't know exactly what I'm gonna say in this video. I have a general structure that I'm gonna try to follow and try to fill in as I go, but I haven't really mapped it all out. So hopefully I don't ramble, hopefully it makes sense. Now this topic was something that's been on my mind for months, honestly. Many months, I don't even know how long. And then a fellow member of the Fresh Squad here on YouTube, David Bushney, made a comment a couple months ago on a video that I did not know was going to be as big as it became, saying that I should do a video about the pressures of being a YouTube reviewer. He even followed up maybe like a month later and requested it again. So David, thank you for being persistent about this very important topic. A part of what has actually spurred me to finally do this is I've seen a couple videos lately from some of my peers kind of touching on parts of this idea. And I'm not going to go into those videos, nor am I even going to go into my opinions on those videos, but it did motivate me to finally give my take and give my side on this wonderful, crazy world of being a fragrance reviewer. We have 7 points that we're going to touch on. I only have the points, I don't have any details for them, so hopefully that makes sense as we go along. So let's dive right into it. No particular order here. First point is going to be coming up with new content and new content ideas. This is one of those things where you learn as you go. It's not easy to do because what it involves is being creative, at least if you want to stand out. The hardest thing about this idea is balancing familiarity with freshness. A lot of the time when it comes to the viewer, it can be a total roulette to throw an idea out there that is completely new, that has not been done before, that is unfamiliar. An example for me of this idea is my What You Think You Smell Like series. I didn't know exactly how you guys were going to respond to that. That was birthed out of frustration, actually, which is a whole story of its own. Some episodes have seemed to catch, some have not. I do really believe in the series. I put a lot of time into it. Those of you who've been rocking with it, I really appreciate it. If you have yet to give it the time of day, I just want to tell you have nothing to lose. And I urge you to seek something different. It's out there, I've made it. I do think it does offer some value and some different perspectives and a little bit of spotlight on some things that are silly about what we do here. But it's difficult because naturally, when you create ideas for content, you want them to be something that people want to see, even if people don't know they want to see them. And that can be the fun part about it, because you can take a chance and kind of stretch the boundaries a bit and say like, well, maybe if I go in this direction and people haven't really done this, maybe it'll be seen as something that's new and fresh. But obviously we do talk about fragrances, so if you can throw in fragrances in there that are familiar, that's something for people to hold on to. You know, it's a juggling act. And frankly, it can be frustrating when it doesn't work. When you put thought and time into an idea, and we'll go into the time aspect of it all a little bit later, and it doesn't catch and people don't watch it or they don't click on it, it can be frustrating. And I know our job is to just pick it up and keep moving, and that's what we do, on to the next video. But we do want our work to be appreciated by you guys who do subscribe and hopefully find value in what we have to say. So it goes without saying, there are times when it is difficult to create new content. There's times when it's really easy, when we're inspired either by other reviewers or just by our own imagination, whatever it may be. It's ebb and flow, as with everything. Second point, this kind of ties into the first one, and this is not going to apply to everyone in terms of reviewers. In fact, none of these will apply to every reviewer as something that is a difficulty or a challenge to consider when creating content. And this is going to be not succumbing to soulless trends, but still staying relevant. What do I mean by soulless trends? We're talking about the video topics that you see across your feed every single day. If you're subscribed to many reviewers, there are certain topics that you see every channel do. And frankly, just for me, in my experience, those are the topics that I have started to get as far away from as possible. I don't feel authentic doing those topics. I'm not going to go into what those topics are. I think you already know. You might already watch them and enjoy them. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with enjoying them, but as a reviewer, getting into the pond in your boat and fishing with the same lure that apparently works, it can work for you, but it can also just make you another one. You don't stand out by doing that. And it's harder and harder to do these days, especially as a new reviewer coming into the space where you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels out there now dedicated to fragrance. When I got in, it was not like that. The pond has really, really grown. So I can only imagine what it's like being newer, let's say within the past year or two, or newer than that, to really grow and catch momentum. And it can be very tempting to just do those popular topics. And again, they could work, but is it sustainable? It becomes a rat race at that point when you're trying to compete with someone doing the same topic. I'm not in it for the rat race. I want to carve my own path. That's what I've been trying to do. Moving on. Up next, this is a big one. And again, things have been said about this. I'm not going to touch on those things, but free bottles. Free bottles being sent to reviewers. This is a big topic of controversy. This can be a whole nother video of its own. I'm not going to make this super deep here. Yes, as reviewers, once you reach a certain size and visibility, certain brands will reach out to you because they want exposure via your platform. They're looking for sales. They're looking for profit. And they use us as advertisers. Not too different from a company approaching a television station with a commercial saying, hey, can you run our ad? And the TV station's like, yeah, we'll run your ad for a price. The price thing is not quite the same here on YouTube with fragrance reviewing as it is in other parts of just marketing and advertising. It's still kind of a touchy subject. A lot of the time our payment is the fragrance itself. And it's usually niche and indie brands that do gifting of bottles because they don't spend money on advertising like designer brands do, because everyone knows designer brands. Everybody knows Gucci and Prada and Versace and Armani because they do advertise, but we become their advertisers. Now, the hope is that the artistry is at the forefront of this exchange. They give us the fragrance, we hopefully love it, and then we share our thoughts on it. But the idea is to be unbiased. Now, as you might already know and have heard or could probably surmise, there can be pressure, even unspoken pressure from brands to be a certain way about their fragrances, not in what they say, but if you say something they don't like, you don't hear from them anymore. And that is totally true. And that can be a tricky thing to juggle because brands talk, and if you make somebody mad, they might tell somebody else to tell somebody else, and pretty soon you have no one contacting you. Now, is that a really huge problem? No, it doesn't have to be. It really depends on the type of content you're trying to put out there. I am a person who does accept free bottles because this hobby is expensive, as you already know. It can be. And for people who make content on a daily basis or every other day like myself, to have new and fresh things to talk about, we need an infusion of products to talk about. And we're not making millions of dollars doing this. Another topic which we'll go over in a second. So yes, free bottles are welcome. Now, a free bottle does not buy a positive review. I talk about stuff that I love, and if I say I love it, I actually do. But I know it's still a touchy subject for a lot of viewers because they say, well, can we trust reviewers, especially when a certain brand reaches out to several people all at once, and then you have this massive wall of reviews on one fragrance. And especially if everyone loves it, then yeah, it can look really fishy, or it could actually just be a fantastic fragrance. But I understand it looks like we're being bought and all that stuff. I totally get the perspective of the viewer in that regard. So it is a juggling act. It's difficult for us to decide, do I go with this brand? Do I believe in what they have to say? Do I believe in their product and their vision? Do I like what they're putting out? If all those things are checked, then I'm going to talk about them here. And what you do with that is totally up to you. If you want to try it, you can. If you don't, you can let it go. Our goal is to maintain our credibility with you so that we can be a trusted source for what you want to know. And we just hope that you understand that the idea of free products is nothing new and nothing specific to the fragrance YouTube space. It's all over the place. It's normal. It's the way things are. Take it or leave it. Again, your money can stay in your pocket either way. Monetizing. This is a tough one as well, because this one is not quite as public as even something like free bottles, which we do talk about from time to time. But monetizing a YouTube channel, there's a number of ways to do it. Again, a video for another time. Why monetize? What's the point? Why would we want to do that? Well, first of all, who doesn't want to make money for the work that they do? If you have a problem with that, if you have an opposition to that, then you're living in the past. I don't know what to tell you. Yes, it's labor of passion, but we cannot pay our bills with passion. If you're watching fragrance reviews 10 years ago, then yeah, there was a time when most of the people here, and there weren't very many of them, were coming home from their 9 to 5, turning on their webcam with a lamp and talking about a fragrance for 10 to 15 minutes and not making a dime. Those days are over. It's just simple as that. And especially for a lot of us out here who put in a lot of time, who do make regular content on a regular basis, yeah, we want to be compensated so that time can be exchanged for money that we can use to support ourselves and stay alive and eat and even get new fragrances. Obviously, YouTube pays a little bit with ad revenue. That's nothing new. And there are other ways to monetize in regards to sponsored content. Now that again is a touchy subject here in the fragrance world. The bulk of what we see is affiliate marketing. So click this link, buy the fragrance here. It costs you nothing extra. I get a little cut of it. We keep it moving. There's nothing wrong with that. We see that everywhere. And it's really, again, no additional cost to the viewer. It can be a vulnerable thing to disclose. And I've witnessed this firsthand as people think like, oh, you're only pushing this because you're getting paid from it. Reality is there's nothing I can say to convince that person otherwise. So that will always be there, but it is something we have to come up against. Keep that in mind. Bottom line is we want our time spent and the return on that time spent to be somewhat equal. Speaking of time, let's talk about the next point, which is production, the production side of making videos. You know, frankly, anyone can do it. Anyone can do this. When it comes to being a likable and effective and relatable personality on camera, that's a whole nother thing. That's something that maybe comes in varying degrees between people. But when we're talking about just the tools that it takes to create, everyone can do this. You need a camera, you need some kind of editing software, you need good lighting. That's mostly all you need to do this, but it still takes a lot of time. Planning content, again, similar to the first point, talking about coming up with new ideas, it can take time. Sometimes it can be super quick. Sometimes it can take a while. I've sat for like an hour trying to figure out what the heck I want to film. Sometimes it takes time to plan. And then you finally get to film it. It might be the shortest part of the entire process, but it still takes time. And it takes a lot of energy as well to be lively and to talk to a camera as if it's a person. It's actually kind of crazy if people would see me in my apartment right now, but this is what I'm doing. And then there's editing. Editing, it can range, but it can take hours. Hours, 3, 4, 5 hours to edit one video, depending on the content, depending on how involved it is, depending on how long it is. It can take a long time. That's just for one video. That adds up. And then creating the thumbnail and coming up with a good title, all of that takes research and it takes time. So the production side of this is not an easy feat. It is one that I love. I love editing. I will never have anyone edit my videos for me. Nothing wrong with doing that, but I actually love it because it is a creative outlet for me. It is another voice, another artistic voice that I can tap into to project myself to the world, just as much as how I talk on the camera. How I edit my videos is also a part of who I am. It's a craft that I've worked at for years now. I have over 500 videos on this channel. I've edited every single one of them. So it's something that I actually really enjoy, but it takes time, which plays into why we really hope you guys want to see these videos, because you can put 5 hours into a video and a very small portion of your audience will watch it. Naturally, that's a little disappointing, but we have to keep it moving. Now, here's a big one. Fragrance collection. Some of the most credible reviewers here in the space are the ones with the largest collections, and you see it behind them on camera. You always see that. And there's just something to that. There's a certain look, there's a vibe when you see that. It's not absolutely necessary to have a massive collection in order to be a popular channel. But as you start to grow and you start to have brands reaching out and you start to continually like research and buy, and you amass more fragrances at a faster rate than the average viewer or consumer, that can become a problem. And you don't always hear us talk about it because we're constantly putting out new content. Here's another 10 fragrances to look at. Here's another 10, different from the last 10, and another 10. Meanwhile, all those other 10s are just going back on the shelf, back on the shelf. And many of us amass a massive collection that does have function and purpose because we do use it for videos, but we're still one human and we still can't use all that fragrance and enjoy all that fragrance. So it can be difficult. Many of us downsize. In fact, I'm in the process of downsizing myself because I'm getting ready to move. and I don't want to take a bunch of clutter with me. There's certain fragrances that I have that not only am I not wearing, but I'm not even making videos about them. So I have no business keeping them. So we do what we have to do in order to stay sane, but that is one of the challenges. We amass a lot kind of for the sake of you so that you can have options and have recommendations and just new things to discover. But just know on our end, we turn that camera off and we put those fragrances back on the shelf, and it can be overwhelming. And the final point, which goes without saying, is criticism and hate. As you can surmise, the bigger you grow, the more you put yourself out there, the more resistance and pushback you'll receive. And I can say for myself, it has caused me to grow some thicker skin. You would never think that words typed out in pixels on your screen can actually affect you emotionally, but they certainly can. There are some people who are sad or upset or angry or just unhappy with their lives, and they seek to impart that on you as a reviewer, even if they don't know it. I think that any genuinely content or happy person wouldn't really seek to harm someone else via comments, especially someone they don't know and that does not know them. But this is the world we live in. This is the internet. You got to be careful what you say, and you do have to be very mindful of people not really digging every word that comes out of your mouth and making that known. Constructive criticism is one thing. When someone says, I hear what you're saying, but this is how I see it, I disagree, I might do it differently, that's different. But when someone tries to attack you personally, in the dark recesses of our editing and comment answering that we do all by ourselves in between videos, it can be tricky. It can be a difficult time to interface with that. So you let those daggers come in, you pull them out, we got to keep it moving. But it is a challenge putting yourself out there in such a way where thousands of people might see you and have something to say. As George Zaharoff likes to put it, when it comes to putting yourself out there in any way to the world, he says it's like showing your bare butt to the world and having people critique it. That's a great analogy, I gotta say. Anyway, I could go on and on. This could become a series. This is already longer than I wanted it to be, but I would love to know what you think. This is very vulnerable for me to make. I could have spoken deeper on some topics, but I wanted to keep it succinct. So let me know what you think of this idea down below. Let's have a conversation about it. We don't talk about this thing quite openly as we should, I think, here on YouTube, because it's not an easy thing to talk about as a reviewer, but I'm opening the door. Come on in, let's chat. Thank you so much for tuning in. Peace. I'll see you in the next one.